by the convention organizers is a very interesting one. But we are going to conduct this more as a workshop. The idea was that I will present some of the more important concepts, and then we have a few discussion questions that we would like to put up to you. And I'm hoping that the devotees can get together and pool your experiences and come up with some ideas. And maybe you can share that with us also. So that's what we intend to do today. I think it's good also that we do it during the afternoon because I think then you'll probably be more alert. So let's do that now. The topic is very important because it is actually very much in line with the idea of this year's convention, and it speaks about this concept of Bhakti-vrksha or Bhakti-vrksha. And I think this morning, if some of you attended the program at the presentation this morning in the temple, you would have heard how Bhakti-vrksha as a preaching model can be very effective and very powerful. But this time the organizers wanted us to actually look at Bhakti-vrksha not just as a preaching model in terms of numbers, but to also think about the concept of whether sometimes as we move into preaching, are we just concerned about cultivating crowds in the sense that we are just getting numbers, or are we more concerned about cultivating devotees? That's the question that we are looking at. The challenge that we find across the world whenever we do preaching, which can be called Bhakti-vrksha, it could be called Namhata, it could be called any other form of preaching, is that sometimes in order to measure our success, we tend to look at the numbers. And is numbers going to be enough for us? And is numbers the only form of success? So there are some challenges there that we thought would be good for us to explore. If you take a note from the ISKCON Congregational Ministry, you will find that there are certain elements of Bhakti-vrksha that we should just recap in our minds. First of all, Bhakti-vrksha is not actually a model that was taken from any other religious organizations. Sometimes people think that we borrowed this idea, for example, from the church, because the church has a form of what we call self-preaching. But actually, if you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, and if you read Srila Prabhupada's purports, and if you have been acquainted with the acharyas like Bhakti-vinod Thakur, you will also find that Lord Chaitanya and this movement have always been compared to what we call the tree of devotion. And this tree of devotion is known as the Bhakti-vrksha. Srila Prabhupada writes very nicely in chapter 9 of Adi Lila. He says, it is figuratively described that both the tree itself and the trunk of the tree are Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The tree surrounds the entire world, and the flowers of the tree are to be distributed to everyone. In this way, the tree of Lord Chaitanya intoxicates the entire world. So it's very clear here that we are talking of a situation where the tree itself is considered to be the tree of devotion. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of Chinese devotees here. Prabhu, do we need translation? Yeah? Okay. So are you going to do the translation then? Okay. Just make yourself comfortable in a situation where you can actually, it'll be easier for you to do the translation. And then once you're comfortable, then we should go back. I think there are a few more devotees coming here also. Okay. Srila Prabhupada also stated this important point in the Adi Lila, 9 chapter 8th verse. Our International Society for Krishna Consciousness is one of the branches of the Chaitanya tree. So, one thing we should remember and appreciate is that this Chaitanya tree is actually a very special tree because it is a tree of devotion service. And therefore, whenever we start or embark on any kind of preaching program, especially when we do it in the mood of wanting to spread Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, then that becomes a very sacred task for all of us. This is very important. Because sometimes what can happen is that we may have been practicing devotional service for such a period of time that we may not actually appreciate the value of how important preaching in this manner, the way Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us, the benefits of it actually are. And when that happens, we could replace the objective of the Bhakti-vrksha with our own objectives. And that can sometimes be a numbers game. So this is an important point that Srila Prabhupada brings up. What is the goal of Bhakti-vrksha programs? I order every man within this universe to accept this Krishna consciousness movement and distribute it everywhere. This is a beautiful quote from Mahaprabhu in Adi Lila, 9th chapter, 26th verse. So it's very clear that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is, in that sense, the father of this entire movement. And he has ordered every one of us. Every man includes every woman too. And he's including everyone, not only in this world, but the world that seems actually within this universe. And he's saying that we should all have that sacred duty to first of all accept this Krishna consciousness and then to distribute it. This is an important point. We will not be able to distribute something which we have not accepted or which we don't possess. Until we have ingested the essence of a particular mood of preaching, how are we going to actually transmit it to others? And until and unless we have ourselves assimilated the philosophy of Bhagavatam, of devotional service, then it's going to be very difficult to be able to fulfill the role of actually distributing it to everyone else. So actually the role of Bhakti-vrksha is twofold. We, as leaders who are going to preach Krishna consciousness, we must first of all be able to accept this philosophy. And accepting it is not theoretical. Accepting it really means to accept it from a practical ground. And that is why this entire convention, one of the themes of this convention is to actually internalize, to really look back and unlearn some of the habits that we may have learned. Because sometimes we may be thinking that we are already in Krishna consciousness, we know enough, and we can just spread the movement. But there is no end to our own standard of Krishna consciousness. There is no end for us to continue being trained in Krishna consciousness. And the more we accept this Krishna consciousness movement, the more we'll be able to distribute it everywhere. So it's a very simple statement, but it has very deep implications. Not just on preaching to the other living entities, but also on the level of our acceptance in this Krishna consciousness. So the Bhakti-vrksha program, if you look at the ISKCON congregational history, you will see that the Bhakti-vrksha program is actually meant to enable everyone to practice, to grow, and to preach the process of bhakti. So this is a very simple but very important point. In other words, the program that is known as Bhakti-vrksha should be an enabling program. Sometimes we think that we are able to just practice, grow, and preach the process of Bhakti Yoga. But we must understand that we must be enabled to do so. In other words, there should be constant training. You will find in the Cultivating Ministry's information on Bhakti-vrksha, so much of Bhakti-vrksha's success is dependent on how much we are trained and how much we are ready to train others in Krishna consciousness. So that's one of the principal points. The second is that Bhakti-vrksha teaches us we have to be prepared to learn how to help others in their Krishna consciousness. And why should we be helping others in their Krishna consciousness? So that one, they get the taste of devotional service, but two, they will also be equipped to preach to new people. That is very important. There's a saying that goes, if I have $5 in my pocket, I can't give you $6. I can only give you 5. If I have $3, I can give you 4. I can only give you 3. So actually, the success of preaching depends so much on the level of realization and the level of sincerity of the preacher. To the extent that the preacher is trained and the preacher takes the process seriously, that much effective will be the preaching. So this is also very important. The other aim of the Bhakti-vrksha program is to provide association, sadhu sangha. We all know from Bhagavatam and from Shastras the value of sadhu sangha and how important it is for us to advance in devotional service. We must remember that many living entities, all of us included, were once upon a time not Krishna conscious. Krishna consciousness was dormant in our hearts, but it required association of devotees to actually revive the dormant love of God. And that's why providing association is so important a goal in Bhakti-vrksha. And not only do we provide association, but we also must build a support in the spiritual community. Just like in the material world, communities are growing because they support each other. We find actually in our experience at this point that the more supportive a community is towards preaching, towards serving devotees, that community ultimately is very successful in actually inspiring others to become Krishna conscious. Not just bringing them in to fill the numbers, but in actually making them Krishna conscious. So spiritual community support and providing association. And when that happens, a new devotee can become strong. And then that new devotee can perhaps start another small group, right? And that group will then expand into another group. And that is how the tree of devotional service will grow. Srila Prabhupada said, there can be one tree of devotional service, but there can be hundreds and thousands of branches. And why are the branches so important? Because every branch derives nourishment from the same tree. That is very important. And when you have a branch that derives nourishment from the same tree, the fruits of all these branches will actually taste just as good as every other branch. So this is a very important concept that Srila Prabhupada gave us. And the Bhakti-vrksha program is very much aligned to that. Now, if we want to achieve all of these as part of our spiritual growth, as part of growing the community, you will find that this must be done in two ways. It must be systematic, which is very important. And besides being systematic, there must be stress, emphasis, that at every level of devotional service and every level of preaching, there should be training. If you read the Prabhupada's letters, Prabhupada uses the word training on several occasions, and so many times. He was of the firm conviction and directed his disciples that if anyone knew what to come, we have to train them. Right? So training is not only a part of just someone new coming to Krishna consciousness, but training is an ongoing process. In the material world, in order to constantly advance in our jobs, you will know that if you don't go for a particular training, or after a while you don't train and get upgraded, you'll find that you stagnate. Actually, in the spiritual world, that is also very much true. If we suddenly sit back and say, I have arrived, and now my duty is simply to train others, but I myself may not have the nourishment that is needed to continue to be a good preacher and a good instrument to Krishna and his devotees, that requires training. That requires training. So, for leadership in Bhakti-vrksha, in preaching to be dynamic, leadership itself must recognize the need for constant training. Sometimes what happens is congregations concentrate very much on training new devotees, but after they have come through, we stop actually training them, or we stop actually paying so much attention to them, because we feel, okay, they have walked through the door, now let's keep looking outside for more people to walk through the door. But what happens to those who have walked through the door? How do we continue to guide them? And how do we continue to engage them? So that is a very important aspect of practice and teaching. Am I too fast, Prabhu? Are we okay? For the translation? Okay. Thank you. So therefore, the Bhakti-vrksha program needs to implement what we call a culture of training. This is a very important thing, right? When you talk about culture, what do we mean by culture? A culture is actually a way of living. If you go to a particular house or particular group of devotees, you find every congregation has a particular mood. Right? Very often, congregations are defined by their path, by their culture. In certain congregations, there is a particular culture. Sometimes one congregation may emphasize on book distribution. Another congregation may emphasize on prasada distribution. And sometimes a particular congregation is defined very much in its culture by the leadership. So if the leadership's culture is in line with what is given to us, then Bhakti-vrksha will actually meet its objectives. And that's why today's training is it just enough for us to look at numbers? Because there is an element of Bhakti-vrksha where we are looking at numbers. We cannot run away from it. Very often Bhakti-vrksha leaders, even though they are very concentrated on training, but equally is sometimes the pressure, if I may use that word, that we should reach a certain point, expand. We have to reach a certain point, we expand. And the matrix for the expansion is very often a number. So that's why the question is asked, what is the goal of Bhakti-vrksha? I would like to share a few thoughts with you about Bhakti-vrksha as presented by Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Devakinandan. Because this is a very bona fide way of approaching this topic. After I share with you these, I have a few questions that I put down on the slides. And I would really like us to divide ourselves into groups and maybe look at these questions. And then I would like to hear the leaders or the representatives of the group coming back to us and sharing these thoughts. Because that will make this discussion a discussion. Otherwise it's going to be one way, right? So let's look at Bhakti-vrksha. There are some examples that we can derive an understanding of how actually we cultivate devotees. Because the essence of Bhakti-vrksha is to cultivate devotees. In Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.14, Narada instructed Vyasadeva, and this is a very important verse. Tato kinchana yadviveksha. This verse is there, and in this verse, Narada actually gives a very important point to Vyasadeva. He says, whatever that you desire to describe that is separate in vision from the Lord will only cause what we call the opposite effect. In Bhagavatam, he uses the word Prita-isha. In other words, it is the opposite. And it will cause what we call Dushkita mati. Dushkita means it will actually cause disturbance to the mind. So Bhagavatam, Narada is telling us that if you want to describe Krishna, then we should describe Krishna in such a way that it is completely aligned with the Lord. There should be no concoction. There should also not be any other motivation. In Vyasadev's case, he had described everything except Krishna. He had glorified, he had put down so many points of spiritual knowledge, but he had missed out on glorifying Krishna. So Narada very kindly pointed out to him that we may be able to achieve certain things, but if it is separate from the vision of the Lord, it may appear valuable, but ultimately it will not actually bring the desired effect. It in fact disturbs the mind. It is the same thing actually that's also stated by Krishna in the second shloka or Chatu shloka in Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? Vrite ritam yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta chakuni tadvidvan atmano maya yatha maso yatha maha. Krishna says there that Brahma, whatever that is valuable, whatever that appears to be valuable in this world, but if it is not connected to Krishna, then actually it has no value. In fact, yatha maso yatha maha. The effect of that is that it will drag you down. So we may have so many different, we may be in a spiritual setting, we may have ideas about how to preach to devotees or living entities, but if our preaching is not aligned with exactly the mood of ahaitati apati down, which means that our only motivation is to bring people to Krishna. There's no other motivation. The numbers will count, whether I will be pleasing someone, if I do this doesn't count. What really counts is that we are trying our best to give Krishna consciousness. That mood will allow us to keep aligned with Krishna. So this is a very important point in Vyasadev's life, because when external targets replace the goal of deepening faith and devotion, the result can be that the preacher and the hearer can actually be educated. So our goal must always be clear. Narada in this case, came to see Vyasadeva because he wanted to focus on guiding him properly. That was the mood of Narada. And he came to see just one disciple. And that one disciple whom he preached to very wonderfully actually gave to humanity the wonderful gift of Sri Narada did not do mass preaching. He didn't sit down with a group of people. He just decided, let me spend my time, my effort, and all my energy on one disciple. And by doing that, it had an exponential impact. Because today we are all recipients and beneficiaries of Sri Narada. The focus sometimes that we must try to remember in Bhakti-vrksha is even as we look at how many people are coming and who are there and how they are coming, the focus should move sometimes from not just quantity to actually quality. Because when quality is there in how we present Krishna consciousness, then shallow results, burnouts, and even the fact that the service becomes mechanical can actually be checked. That's a very important point. So therefore, sometimes we ask ourselves in Bhakti-vrksha or in preaching, how should we measure our success? Are we measuring success merely in terms of numbers, which is very important, because if 10,000 people came and celebrated Janmashtami, that's obviously very, very encouraging, because out of 10,000 souls, each one of them would have been exposed to Krishna, the seeds which we sowed, and some of them will go on to become serious. But that's not the only matrix, and that's not the only way to study. What is also very important is, are we as teachers increasing sadhana and bhakti in the hearts of those we teach? If we have that mood, then what happens is, we have the faith that one single transformed life can have ripple effects far beyond statistics, which is very important. I've actually met devotees who have preached in such a focused and loving and dedicated manner to just maybe one or two persons. But the impact is that these persons became very dedicated, and they, with their focus, actually managed to reach to so many others who ordinarily we may not have reached. So that is the ripple effect of Bhakti-vrksha, which is very powerful. Another example is Narada Muni again. Narada Muni cultivated Dhruva Maharaj. Dhruva Maharaj, as you know, was a little boy, very upset with his stepmother. But he took the teachings of his mother very seriously. And when she told him that actually your stepmother is not so wrong, because she did say that you should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is a fact. So you should do that. And little Dhruva heard her, and he went to the forest. And when Narada heard that Dhruva was actually taking up great austerities, he became very intrigued, and he was very attracted to the little boy. And with so much of compassion, Narada decided to see that child. You know, this is a very important episode in Bhagavatam, because a child is hardly what we would call a person that we would normally think would be a person you can preach to. We tend to preach to adults, we tend to preach to, sometimes we target audience. If we want more money to collect in the temple, we may go to a particular group of people who we know are capable of giving more Lakshmi. But here, Narada had nothing to gain from Dhruva. Nothing. Dhruva couldn't give him anything because Dhruva himself was actually very upset. But what did he do? He recognized that Dhruva had a material ambition. He recognized it. But he didn't see that as an event. He saw that, he appreciated that Dhruva actually had determination. So this is a very important part of Bhakti-vrksha preaching. A Bhakti-vrksha preacher should learn to understand his audience very well. And they should be able, he or she should be able to see a quality in that particular devotee that can be fanned for Krishna consciousness. Narada expertly saw that Dhruva was asking for material ambition, but he was such a determined individual. Surely, I can do something to direct his determination to become determined to serve Krishna. You see? So this is how actually deepened preaching to try and understand what the living entity is actually wanting or doing. Because each person is different. It's so important in meditation. And what did Narada do? Narada did not dismiss his material ambitions. He channeled them and he cultivated it. So therefore, a very important part of Bhakti-vrksha is personal attention. Personal attention is needed for each of the persons who are in Bhakti-vrksha, because sometimes the tendency is we are going to preach, we will give it to everyone, and then we expect that as it grows, we will divide and we will get more people. And the idea tends to be that let's get more people on the platform. But there's also equal value to personal attention. Narada took time to counsel one child. He's such a pure devotee. He has so much potency to preach to the whole world. But he took a lot of time to preach to Dhruva, little Dhruva. And therefore, by doing that, he redirected Dhruva's energy back into Bhakti. So actually, at the heart of Bhakti-vrksha is a deep compassion for the needs of every individual. That's very important. And what did Narada Muni also do? He actually gave Dhruva a roadmap. He gave him a mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. He made it very clear on the process of the worship, and therefore he gave him a very clear path for his devotional practice in sadhana. If you recall in Bhagavatam 6th canto, Narada Muni also did the same thing with Chitraketu Maharaj. When Chitraketu Maharaj was in the depth of his lamentation at the loss of his son, and when Narada and Angira Muni came, it was Narada who took the initiative to give very specific guidelines on the prayers that Chitraketu Maharaj should pray. And the result was in a few days, by this undivided attention of one devotee, Narada, on another devotee, Chitraketu, actually Chitraketu Maharaj had darshan of Lord in the form of Sanskrit. So therefore, systematic training, personal attention is the heart of Bhakti-vrksha. If Narada, for example, had told him, go figure it out, I'll give you some broad ideas. The rest of it, don't worry, Krishna's in your heart. You figure it out as you go on. Dhruva would have remained ambitious, but for a material propensity and not a spiritual propensity. So the point is, even as we try to get as many persons into Krishna consciousness, I would humbly submit to everyone that one nurtured soul becoming a great devotee is proof that actually cultivation which is of quality can outweigh others. It can. And one devotee like that could actually bring thousands and thousands of Krishna consciousness. It could. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj just fanned the flame of devotion in the heart of Srila Prabhupada when he met him. And through Srila Prabhupada, thousands and thousands of living entities have actually come to fulfill the order of his spiritual needs. One movement, and not many stars, but it actually worked. Another good example, Kapila Dev and Mother Devahuti. Kapila instructed his mother systematically in the science of Bhakti and Sankhya. An entire third canto, large part of the third canto, is dedicated to how systematically Kapila Dev gave his great knowledge to his mother. This personal mentoring was so important. Kapila Dev is actually a plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he would have sat down and preached to thousands and thousands of persons because he had the potency. But instead he chose to deliver his mother and give her the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, another important aspect of Bhakti-vrksha is personal mentoring. We hear the word mentoring so often used in a movement. Mentoring is so important, but it becomes even more important when it is personal. And this personal mentoring cannot be replaced by AI, it cannot be replaced by general guidelines. It must always be the interaction with devotees. If all of us came here and we were all seated, and after we spoke now, everyone had a chance to interact with each other on the discussion, you'll find that interaction is what actually spurs us in. So Bhakti-vrksha is a very important model but it also requires personal mentoring. And Kapila Dev covered Sambandha, Abhidheya and Prayojana, all of them step by step through the chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam. And the result was Devahuti attained devotion, not just on the relief of suffering, but to actually have a taste for Krishna consciousness. Remember, she was morose when her husband, Bhadramuni, had left because he had done his part. But when Kapila Dev started speaking to her, mentoring her, spending time with her, and giving her Krishna consciousness, at the end of the day, she became a very cultivated and devotional personality. So therefore, we have to be patient in Bhakti-vrksha. It's a very important quality for all preachers, to be patient. It's a quality for advancement in devotional service. It's a quality that's needed to spread Krishna consciousness. If in Bhakti-vrksha we expect devotees to transform, the new devotees to transform themselves overnight, or if we push them to the point where they are just being given something and told to move from level 1 to level 2 to level 3, and they are not ready for it, then it appears like we are reaching some numbers, but the devotees may not actually realize. Sometimes, we've had experiences where very quickly devotees get certificates from point A to point B to point C. But upon closer reflection and checking with them, you realize that many of them are really not confident of the knowledge that they have gained yet. Because the preachers were very impatient to move them from level to level to level. That is a very important thing. Patience. We have a saying that if you're not patient, you'll end up being a patient. Right? So patience is so important, and Kapila Dev did that. And the result is Devahuti. It's a beautiful verse. Tantva gataham sharanam sharanyam swabritya samsara kudhayam jijnasayam prabhute purushasya namami sadharma vilam varishtam. So Devahuti, at the end of her time with Kapila Dev, she says, I have taken shelter of your lotus feet because you are the only person of whom to take shelter. You are the axe, the power, which can cut the tree of material existence. I therefore offer my obeisances unto you, who are the greatest of all transcendentalists. And I inquire from you as to the relationship between man and woman and between spirit and matter. And that began the process of devotion service. Two words are very important in this shloka: Sharanam and Sharanyam. Sharanam actually means to surrender, but Sharanyam means one who is worthy of surrendering to, or one who is worthy of taking shelter. Krishna is the only personality who is worthy of taking shelter. No one else can give shelter to Krishna. And as Krishna's representative, all of you become worthy of giving shelter and serving devotees and the living devotees, because we are connected with one another. So therefore, every Bhakti-vrksha leader, or anyone who is preaching to anyone about Krishna consciousness, we should be very clear that we must actually be worthy in our behavior, in our conduct, and also in our understanding of Bhakti-vrksha. If we can understand that, then we become worthy instruments in the hands of Krishna. This is very important. In Chaitanya Leela, Lord Chaitanya continued the same points in Srimad Bhagavatam. In the episode with Prakashananda Saraswati, Mahaprabhu won over Prakashananda Saraswati. He was the leader of the minorities. And in Banaras, Lord Chaitanya sat down with him. Even though he was in the assembly of all the impersonalists, he sat down with him, and through patience and humility, he nurtured one very important person, and that was Prakashananda Saraswati. And by doing that, he gave personal attention to him, and he transformed him through his humility. In fact, the character of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, if you read the Leela, impressed the entire assembly. Everyone became impressed by his character, by his behavior. Not even so much what the Lord said, but how patient and humble the Lord was in approaching and preaching to Prakashananda Saraswati. This is a very important thing, because the impact that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu created was an entire school of devotees became softened towards the concept of bhakti. That's it. I'll tell you a very interesting episode that happened in Singapore. When our temple became a Ritwik, and you all know what Ritwik is, I don't have to tell you that. Many of the devotees were either confused, lost faith, and they splintered. This was in the early 1990s. There was a big group of devotees from Bangladesh who were working in Singapore and who were in the temple. And so when this happened, they continued going to the temple because they were very attached to the temple leader. His Holiness Bhakti-vrksha Maharaj came to Singapore at that time. And we told Maharaj we don't have the language to be able to reach out to the members of the Bangladeshi community. Can you talk to them? Somehow or another we managed to get Maharaj to meet the leader. Maharaj said with just one devotee, over 6 days, he spent 1 week with us in Singapore. 6 days, every day, he would sit with the leader and he spoke to him. He preached to him Krishna consciousness, he gave him all the Sanskrit evidences, and on the 7th day, this devotee went back to the congregation and he spoke to all of them what Maharaj had spoken to him for 6 days. And 2 weeks later, 150 to 155 devotees left the Ritwik temple. And they all came to Krishna consciousness. This is a very real example that we witness. And this is the power of actually doing deeper, serious preaching. Maharaj didn't have to get everyone. All he did was exactly what was shown here. So the transformation of one person in your Bhakti-vrksha can make the difference. So therefore, what is very important in this convention is that we have been preaching and preaching and preaching for years and years and years. But sometimes it's good to pull the brakes and try to understand what is the meaning of that and why we do it. So cultivating even one influential soul can change the direction of Then this is a very practical example that Mahaprabhu gave us. In Madhya Lila, you had the famous Purva Brahmana. He wanted to abandon his family and he just simply wanted to follow Mahaprabhu. The Lord's cultivation was very different. The Lord didn't tell him, drop everything, abandon everything. You have so many families, so many lives, just come with me now. He didn't do that. Instead of encouraging escape, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed him to remain at home and to preach. Now this is a very important aspect of Bhakti-vrksha. And what is this aspect? That when we reach out to the living entities, the new persons who are coming into Bhakti-vrksha, forget the new persons, even devotees, because all of us are devotees who have families. And many of our family members may not even be devotees sometimes. And often that is the case. But how do we handle them? And what advice and direction the leaders should give to their Bhakti-vrksha persons is very important. It could make or break their Krishna consciousness. It could make or break their relationships. Mahaprabhu showed balance and maturity. And true cultivation meant helping Purva Brahmana practice bhakti in his situation. Which is why Mahaprabhu has stated so nicely, and he quotes the famous verse of Brahma stated in the 10th canto, 14th chapter, Stade Sita, that in whatever situation that we are, it is important for leaders in Bhakti-vrksha to recognize that we are not here to create disturbance in society. We are here to create devotion in society, and that devotion has to be given through maturity and through balance. And the effect of that was the steady practice of Purva Brahmana when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left inspired so many other householders in that vicinity, and they also took up Krishna consciousness. This can be the powerful effect of Bhakti-vrksha. So real growth is about driving a person to serve steadily wherever they are, and not just to inflate the follower counts, which is a very important thing that we must they connected for. One more example, Rupa Goswami. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu cultivated Rupa Goswami by spending 10 days with him in Gaya, you all know. And then again, Mahaprabhu personally instructed him. That's why, instead of trying to gather a crowd, calling deep attention within one's heart is such an important thing in devotional service. He also was very systematic in his approach to imparting Krishna consciousness and philosophy for future preaching to Rupa Goswami. And he emphasized quality over quantity. And Rupa Goswami's cultivation by Mahaprabhu has given this entire movement its philosophical foundation. And so you can see by the mood of all these acharyas, led of course by none other than the Lord himself as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that our entire parampara has been cultivated very carefully, very deliberately, and with so much of joy. This is something that they have given to us, and it's so important that all of you, as leaders preaching to others, should also take lead from. So this is a very important point. And we conclude with Srila Prabhupada's example. Srila Prabhupada's example is very nice. I'm sorry if it's a bit small, but I'm going to share the slides with you all anyway, so you take it. I'll read it to you. If you look at Srila Prabhupada coming in to New York in 1966, when he started cultivating, he did not concentrate on mass audiences. In fact, he personally took the sadhana, he answered questions, and he guided a handful of seekers. And he did that with all his heart, actually. And those few, at that time known as Buddha, Hare, Janki, Shamsundar, they all went on to become pillars of the Buddha. And they themselves also preached and inspired so many others. So therefore, one small Bhakti-vrksha book, if you cultivate them really nicely, can actually give birth to a worldwide mission of devotees. Because every single member who comes to Bhakti-vrksha should be treated as a gem. Not as a number, but as a gem. That is very important. When you look at Srila Prabhupada's letters, you will find that Prabhupada wrote thousands of letters. And he wrote them to individual devotees. And he personally guided them in their sadhana, in marriage, in services, and even through their struggles. Even leaders receive systematic nurturing from Srila Prabhupada. You read letters to Krishna Maharaj, you read letters to Brahmananda Maharaj at that time. They were all leaders. And yet Srila Prabhupada was doing the same thing he did years ago when they came to Krishna consciousness. He never stopped nurturing them. Very often we find that many leaders, sometimes they are nurturing so many others, but they also want nurturing. They also want to be nurtured by senior leaders. But sometimes the nurturing may be absent for a variety of reasons. For lack of resources, or even sometimes the forgetfulness that actually devotees at every step require nurturing. Not just at the beginning. Prabhupada took so many morning walks and classes, but the morning walks were not meant for the public. They were actually meant for cultivating his close disciples. Sometimes they were meant to exchange with people who were just new to Krishna consciousness or who were inquiring about Krishna consciousness. So you see, at many points of time, Prabhupada had a small circle cultivation, but it produced really strong leaders. And that circle grew when the leaders went out and they would form their circles too. And this is actually the essence of Bhakti-vrksha. And whenever Prabhupada was very encouraging of leaders to build temples, which he was, he would always state this point, and you see this in many of his letters. First train the men, then open the center. Again, the emphasis on training. If we keep opening centers and buying land and building numbers, so to speak, we've got 100 centers, or we have 100 Bhakti-vrkshas, the point that we must really understand is, are these Bhakti-vrkshas premature expansions, or are they mature expansions? This is very important. And it is so important for leaders to understand the difference. Because what happens is, Srila Prabhupada had the maturity and the purity to resist premature expansion without mature leaders. Sometimes people may say, well, Srila Prabhupada's disciples were so young when he sent them out. Youth is not the criteria for immaturity. The fact is, Srila Prabhupada gave them the seed of bhakti. He gave them the inspiration. And these generation of leaders who came forward to distribute books, to spread the knowledge of Krishna consciousness, because they were focused on the quality of their preaching, they reaped great rewards, and they all offered it back to Srila Prabhupada. And that's why when Prabhupada was here, present physically, the movement grew exponentially. And that's why wherever there are ISKCON centers and temples where leadership is focused on quality preaching, you will see that the devotees are happy, they are peaceful, and they are very encouraged to grow and introduce Krishna consciousness to even more devotees. We end with a few of Srila Prabhupada's instructions. This one, right, is an interesting philosophy discussion. Prabhupada says, and I quote, "No, the majority may not accept. You see, if you want to sell jewels, a diamond, you cannot get many customers. That is not possible. But still, diamond is diamond. It may not have many customers. It doesn't matter. If there is one customer, that is sufficient. Ekas chandras tamohanti nachatara sahasrata. If there is one moon in the sky, that is sufficient to dissipate our darkness. There is no need of thousands or millions of stars. So our movement, if anyone, through all men in the world can understand Krishna consciousness, he will do tremendous good to the people. My Guru Maharaj used to say, such an inspiring point from Srila Prabhupada, right? The second letter is to Upendra. Yes, a new man may commit blunders in the beginning. That does not mean we may be too impatient with him. Remember the point of patient? After all, training means the man does not know. So you should train him nicely. A Vaishnava is expected to be humbler than the blade of grass. So when you train some new man, you should not get agitated with him. After all, we are preachers, and we do not expect our audience or candidates completely respondent to our call. If everyone is trained, then what is the use of our preaching? I receive daily so many odd letters, but still we have to reply them properly. This is so insightful. How Prabhupada handled different devotees. He was so patient with everyone. And he says here that yes, he received many odd letters, but he never dismissed them. He addressed them actually. Third, in a morning walk, even if I don't get any disciples, I'll be satisfied. But I can't make any compromise with these rascals. I cannot. Ekas chandras tamohanti nachatara sahasrata. If I create one moon, that is sufficient. I don't want many stars. That was my Guru Maharaj's principle, and that is my principle. What is the use of having a number of fools and rascals? If one man understands rightly, he can deliver the whole world. And I want to end by sharing again the conclusion. What is the aim of our devotional service? Savai Sam Hare Hare, Yathor Bhakti Vrksha, Ahayuki Abhyati Naya, Viyatma Suprasida. If we really want to satisfy those who come and they want Krishna consciousness, then it is our duty, sacred duty, to make sure that we approach Krishna consciousness without any material motive. The only motive we should have in Bhakti-vrksha or in any form of preaching is that somehow or another, let me be an instrument to present Krishna consciousness as sincerely as I can within my capacity. And to continuously train, to continuously serve, and help the devotees who are coming to Krishna consciousness. That will actually please Krishna, and Yayatma Suprati Sivati. Our Atma will also become peace. We will become satisfied. So that's a framing of what we have done. And now I want to put forward some thoughts and contemplations so that you can think about it. I have a few questions here. First question, are we more focused on increasing attendance or increasing transformation? how can we shift our focus if needed? First question. Second question, how can we ensure that each new devotee in the group is growing and then being sustained in their spiritual growth and personal sadhana? How do we follow up with devotees who are struggling or slowly progressing? Third, Srila Prabhupada often reminded us to boil the milk and increase the quality of the devotees rather than simply increase the numbers. How do we define the quality of devotee? What qualities are we trying to nurture in ourselves and in others? 4. Are we giving enough emphasis to deep spiritual understanding and practical application of devotional principles? How can we avoid the tendency to water down the philosophy just to make it more appealing? And 5. How should we measure success in Bhakti-vrksha? By numbers, or by how many devotees are seriously practicing, or by any other means? These are all useful questions for us to think about. So what I would ask, respectfully ask for all of you, is that let's divide ourselves into 5 groups. Okay? 5 groups. And in the 5 groups, we will assign each question to each group. Run through them and maybe take 5-10 minutes. And then each group will write down a few points and you can share it with the assembly. Right? No pressure on you. It's just a matter of trying to ingest what we have been speaking about. Your answers will be very illuminating, or your insights will be illuminating, because many of you have preaching experience. And what you think of these questions and the solutions you offer will be very helpful, right? So, I wanted to know, Prabhu, whether we will be able to capture these points in recording this. Okay, because if we're recording this, what you give as feedback, I will ensure it goes back to the leadership and the leaders in the convention, because they did want to hear that, and I think it makes it helpful. Otherwise, we're all happy coming for convention, and then on Sunday we go back, and then there's nothing for us to take back. So that should be one, right? Okay, now how are we going to divide ourselves into 5 groups? That's the key here. And those who have Maharaj will be very happy. So, can I do one thing? Let's just commit this way. Sorry? Any suggestions? 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You want to do that? Okay, you could. Or the other way is, could we just divide ourselves according to the rows? But then you have all the Prabhus here and you talk about these there. But I'm fine with that. So, since everyone is seated this way, okay. Okay, the Chinese group is there also. Prabhu, can I get you to get the Chinese devotees together? Let's do one thing for you. You can actually choose any of those topics that you have there, and maybe you all can discuss it. Choose a topic, just one topic, and you can discuss it. Okay? So take them together. Only thing, tell me which topic you will take. Then the others will be left. Okay? So that will take quite a few of you from there. Okay. So maybe I'll do it this way to make it simpler, right? Mataji's over here. You have, we'll have only 5 questions. Now we have 4 questions. Maybe the first 3 rows, or no, actually the rest of you are there. Maybe the first 3 rows here can come together, and the next 3 rows can come together. You can have a discussion. Now the first 3 rows, can you look at number 1? Okay, number 1. The remaining rows of Mataji's who are there, you look at number 2. Okay? Prabhus, you are here. Maybe we can have the first 2 rows. We don't have so much. First 3 rows. Okay. First 3 rows. I think number 3 is a very important question. And Maharaj is right there. So we have Maharaj also, and we have all of you. Maybe you can huddle together and you can have a discussion on number 3. Okay. Prabhu, for the Chinese devotees, you only have 0.5 now. Can I give you a number? Is it okay? Okay, let me give you 5. Okay? And so now we have number 4. So for those of us who are balanced here, maybe we will get together At the end of the day, choose a representative to make a 2 or 3 minute presentation. That would be helpful. Hare Krishna. I suggest you be sharp and focused. Give yourselves 10 minutes. Okay? Sharp and focused, 10 minutes. If you give yourself 15, it will take longer. 20, it will take longer. Keep it at 10 and see what happens.
Yeah, the one-to-one.
Wrong side.
might want to cultivate it all, but because of the time, sometimes there are some of the things that which is more important for you to cultivate in your body. For the self, and what compared with you. Because what cultivate this group and can be rather so can you also think about what kind either you talk about social media because to kind of go on shop sometimes maybe the person doesn't have the taste of learning. If he doesn't have the taste of learning, how does the other things being the morality and also of course completing that media
everyone would like to go.
Sorry for what was to do. That devotee is new, and all that quality of compassion must be there, right from the beginning, right to the end. If you don't have that, you cannot finish. Compassion. That's why we do Panchakapa every day. There is compassion. So maybe compassion means what? Compassion means that when you with someone can be very educating to you. Someone can be very nice to you. You're dealing with all kinds of people. So how do you deal with someone is not nice to you? Still be compassionate. So we want to inspire them to become compassionate. They become compassionate, then they can do the same as you. So I for me, many years of teaching, especially in China, you have to be compassionate. But if you're not compassionate, you don't say, I want to save this person. I don't save this person, this people suffer. That's compassion. You must put it into their system. You have to save someone. Otherwise, they say, okay, they have no compassion. Basic quality of system. Big one. One can boil water to compassion. The others can communicate. But that one is only on you. You have the other one, you take a compassion. That's where you can speak. You can't stand and this person is
Okay, I will request everyone to start winding down, and then you should be ready to present.
That's 1 or 2 points. Some of you are presenting. You don't want to stop. So there's two questions here. How do you define calling devotee? There is a devotee, and then one point here, we try to treat ourselves and others. Two questions. So we will speak, answer these 2 questions. We will speak.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Let's all come back. You can read your groups, no problems. But I suggest the discussion should end now. And everybody else should be ready to hear everyone else. Let's turn around. You can read your groups. You can read your groups. So we can move on.
I heard you speak, you know what you heard, what you said. I heard you speak, it was because of knowledge and experience.
Okay. Can I request everyone to please be silent? Otherwise, I can't go on. Settle down. Okay. Listen up. Listen up. Each group is going to do this. Hare Each group is going to come forward with a representative or representatives. Share your points. It should be short and sharp. Right? No more than 2-3 minutes, I think it's fine. We want to get to the essence of what you are getting. And then don't throw away what you have given. We'll make sure we capture it. And all this feedback will go back to the leadership. I think it's important. Please know that what you're doing today is not just an exercise. It is valuable to us because it gives us an insight into how you are thinking. Okay? So, can we start with this group? Okay? Who's coming up forward? I'll give you all the... Yeah, make a quick clap. Maybe you can read what is your question.
Hare Krishna. Thanks, Maharaj, for inviting us, for preparing this information.
Okay, so before you start, everybody else, please, you have to be quiet. And Prabhu, you have to speak a bit loud into the, because then everyone can hear you.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, now we can hear you. Okay.
Okay.
What is your question? Number 3.
Number 3.
Number 3, okay. Srila Prabhupada often reminded us to boil the milk, increase the quality of devotees rather than simply increase the numbers. How do we define quality devotee? What qualities are we trying to nurture? Go ahead.
Hare Krishna. So basically, the qualities of devotee in, okay, so basically here we are talking about ourselves and others. Okay, so first we need to be have complete faith on ourselves in order before we preach others. So that's the reason we are saying like faith is very fundamental. Okay, so that is first thing. And second thing is we identify compassion, because without compassion, first of all, compassion has to be very much, one of the quality of the preacher, and preacher has to be a role model. Okay, and he has to be very much compassionate to preach, and then because he may need to preach to different devotees, because all are not at the same level. So some may be very much nicer, and some may be may not be not all at the same standard. So in order to handle the devotees with just especially new devotees, we need to be very compassionate, and then we need to have patience as well in order to nurture them, okay, and then train them to in terms of quality, not in terms of quality. Quantity. So yeah, that's all.
Okay, so the very important qualities you looked at was faith, our own faith, foundation, compassion, and patience, right? So these are the qualities that will actually make us better preachers of Krishna consciousness.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And we also, the group also felt that really it's very important to concentrate on quality, right?
Yes.
Quantity is good, but quality is
Quality
actually
is also important. Because we don't believe on the numbers, we also need the numbers to have a KPI agreement, but quality is equally important.
Yeah. Actually, our KPI is quality and compassion and mercy and all of this.
Correct.
Thank you very much. After this, maybe this first group here, you can see, you can actually come forward and yeah. Okay. Written in big fonts, everybody can read.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, everyone, be quiet. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu Samadhi Sarva. Our question is the first one. Are we more focused on increasing attendance or increasing transformation? So our group actually answered as increasing transformation, basically transforming whoever and wherever they are to the platform of Bhakti in a gradual process. And for that, we believe, we write it in sequential, but actually the first one that we believe is really building a relationship with a new potential devotee in wherever they are, in whatever situation they are, instead of trying to drag them immediately to a very high level or where we are. Always understanding what is their situation, what is their circumstances, and most importantly, understanding their interests, where their focus is, and bring them out from there. And from building relationship, that is where I think the counterpart will also be open to personal mentoring, where we can preach to them about giving them books, preaching about regulatory principles, and most importantly on chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. And that is where we believe that followed by the cultivating and systemic training, like how Prabhu explained to us a while ago, and also helping them, right, as we are getting them through the systemic training, there will be challenges. So we really believe that simplifying the process, really practical tips and tricks without diluting the process will be very helpful in transforming such a potential devotee. And we permission to attendance to members. Again, Mataji also explained Prabhupada made one devotee and from Russia, right? And that particular devotee made many other devotees.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
That's very helpful. I will take one point from this group, building relationships. That's actually so important. And if you look at the foundation of our movement, Samvada is actually very important because until you have that platform, one cannot make advanced relationships. So relationship building is so important. I find in many small Bhakti-vrksha groups, sometimes the questions people ask are things like, my family members are not devotees, what do I do? You know, my husband, may not be happy, what do I do? And suddenly we have to simplify Krishna consciousness so that they are able to digest it, rather than just to give them textbooks and tell them to read and figure it out, because they will not be able to use it. So that's a very important point. Thank you, Mataji. Can we now come back to the second group that was here? Actually, I'm very happy because all your groups, you're all very experts at summarizing. Whenever I've done this, the challenge is to make everyone stop lecturing. But here everyone is very shy. Maybe because you're also hungry. Just 5 minutes more. Alright, Prabhu, what is your question?
Number 4, are we giving enough emphasis to deep scripture understanding and practical application of devotional principles? How can we avoid tendency to water down the philosophy to make it more appealing?
Okay, everyone listen. Yes.
So the consensus in our group is we are not doing enough. We are not giving enough emphasis to deep spiritual understanding and practical application of devotional principles. So there are two things. Firstly is on the people who are preaching and then on the people we are preaching to. So for the people we are preaching, we should actually also keep on reading and keep on understanding deeper, keep on listening to lectures of senior devotees so we get the nourishment and keep on. And then for those who we are trying to preach to, we do not give them hardcore philosophy, we make them very simple in small doses. That means not one time. You see, sometimes I see some devotee new comes, another person preaching, he gives the full philosophy at one time. So that is actually then after 1-2 days you don't see the colors. So basically you have to give the small doses, just a little bit first you have to have the one-to-one interaction, personal interaction with the person, find out his mind frame, how deep he is and how open he is, how much he is into Krishna consciousness and how much he is not into Krishna consciousness and what is his mind frame. So then we simplify the scripture, don't make it too heavy, because if you make it too heavy, they may just think it's too much and just leave and not be interested. And then you make them into friends. And you have sadhu sangha with them. That means you have some of them come for some programs and relate. And then we should not have too big a group. We should have small groups, because too big a group means dilution of friendship and focus.
That's a good point. Yes.
And then we should also do devotee care, not only in spiritual things, but also help them maybe in their house, in their problems. They have somebody mentor, be their mentor. And then inspire them by example. We ourselves should be a good example. Not that like I'm smoking, I say you don't smoke, but I'm smoking, something like that.
Something like that.
So that the leader should be available for the mentors, and we should keep in touch. Like supposing you have 10 people, every day you should maybe keep in touch with 2 people. So in 1 week you get to you get to talk to 10 people. So then the next week again, so they get your interaction once a week, not too much for them. But you have to do more. Every day you must get maybe 1 or 2 people you have to talk to. Not say today I'm busy, tomorrow then. The whole thing also is a problem. So then we should have a systematic and gradual cultivation without sacrificing the core principles. So, and then abide by the scriptures when preaching to newcomers, being firm and not compromising when communicating about the knowledge of the scriptures. So we should give them what they can digest, and also we should not say it's all the same, all religions are the same. It is actually telling something you don't yourself believe in. So basically, if you think you cannot digest it, don't talk about it. Just talk about something like Krishna is the Supreme Lord, like why is the Supreme Lord, Lord Brahma, peace is the Supreme Lord. Something simple. Lord Shiva is the great devotee of Krishna. So bring that all the slowly and steady.
Oh, thank you. Very nice. Thank you. I think one of the takeaways I will take is from this book that's really important is don't be an absent leader. I think that's very important. Sometimes we have a group, we call 1 or 2 persons, the other persons are not called. You know, like absent fathers and absent mothers, they are there but they're not there. In that way, you cannot create relationships and it doesn't make difference. And I like the other point also that there are many parts of Krishna consciousness that take longer time for us to accept. We don't have to put that into somebody's lives immediately. Like in Singapore, for example, for so many years, the reason why we have never been ISKCON is because of the way we presented Devata worship in Singapore amongst the Hindu community. It started in a way where it was an outright condemnation of the Devatas just to glorify Krishna. And the devotees who came there to preach were given a place to preach generously by the temples and managements of Devatas. And then they took the platform to condemn them. So nowadays in Singapore, what we do when we preach to devotees or newcomers is we would rather glorify Krishna. And when we glorify Krishna, Krishna doesn't need his glorification to be based on the condemnation of other living entities. It doesn't matter. So that way they become more open. And they begin to understand the role of the Devatas, the prayers of the Devatas, and they understand what the Devatas are, who they are in relation to Krishna. So really a good point there. Thank you. Very nice. Thank you. Can we have last 2 groups now, right? Can we have the Chinese representative? They were writing a lot, so I'd like to see that as well. Come. I assume you will translate the language.
Yeah, this is Chinese language.
Yes.
So our answer to the last question is how should we measure success in Bhakti-vrksha? By numbers or by how many devotees are seriously practicing or by other means? Our answer is it is by quality, by how many devotees are seriously practicing. But on the other hand, the way to measure the quality, there's one part is by numbers. Because in the teaching, Prabhu, you mentioned by cultivating personal cultivation of the individuals, actually those individuals cultivating more numbers.
Exactly.
So that's one way to measure the success in Bhakti-vrksha. There's another thing also, I remember also, is Nitya Maharaj talks about there are 3 kinds of devotees. One is chants one time of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. The second level is the devotees who chant Mahamantra regularly. The third one is when you see this person, you automatically want to chant Hare Krishna. So I think we want to have those kind of qualitative devotees. That it could give numbers of other people this mantra and to fulfill Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's dream.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. And the point that you really brought up is the secret of Bhakti-vrksha. If you work on quality will attract quantity. That's a fact. It always works. And we see it in wonderful. Thank you very much. One last group, I think. Yes? Do we have any other groups? No, right? Yeah, last group. Come on, please. Thank you. I had the most trouble with this group to stop them from writing. So let's hear from them and then we get end. Please. A bit closer. Oh, okay. You have a notebook of notes. Okay, everyone, let's listen.
All rules to the Prabhu. So our question actually has two questions for you.
Which one is it, number?
How second?
Okay, number 2. Yeah.
So how can we ensure that each new devotee in the group is growing and then being sustained in their spiritual growth and personal sadhana, like chanting, reading, and service? This is number 1.
Yes.
Number 2 is how to follow up devotees who are struggling or slowly progressing.
Closer. You have to take it closer.
Number 1.
Yeah.
How can we ensure that each new devotee in the group is growing and then being sustained in their spiritual growth? So again, building good relationships with them, Prabhu. Like when they are new in the group, making them comfortable.
Yes.
So building good relationship with them when they come new and making them comfortable and gaining their confidence so that we can follow up, because unless we have a good rapport with them, I don't think so we can, they'll be comfortable to share what they need to share with us.
Yes.
So, and then constant follow-ups, encouraging them to come for programs, encouraging them, and once they understand the importance of the philosophy that we are trying to share with them and how we have gained in our personal lives. So, they need to, again the same thing, the rapport is very important. We thought that the rapport we build with them is very important.
Yes.
And then we sustain in the spiritual growth and personal sadhana. Yeah, and slowly, I think meeting them personally, fortnightly once, or maybe weekly once, personally, on personal basis, having smaller groups, and then discussing about their weekly chanting, reading, and what services they have done in that particular group.
Yes.
I think that would help them for them to open up what they have been doing. And when they see other people also sharing, other sincere, genuine devotees who are in the group sharing, I think that will also encourage them to do so. The second question, how do we follow up with devotees who are struggling or slowly progressing? Once we identify that there are devotees who are struggling, they may have a genuine desire to do so.
So identification is very important.
Sorry?
Identification is very
Yes.
important. Yes.
So, as a mentor, I think it's quite easy to identify, because when they are not showing up for regular meetings, or then the question is asked, how is your chanting, and they are not able to give you that particular, you know that they are lacking somewhere.
Yes.
So there must be some personal reasons in their life. Again, the rapport that you have built with them is very important for them to share this personal space with you, and trying to understand instead of pushing them or telling them that you have to come for the class or you have to come once in a week, you have to come for the programs. Try to make space for them where you will be available for them 24/7, where they can reach out to you and they'll be able to share with you what's going in your life. And like you just said, maybe their spouse or their family members are not comfortable. They're going for programs or doing these kind of activities at home. So trying to understand them and constantly keeping in touch with them. When you understand there's a weak child in the school, we also as teachers, we try to, give special attention to these kind of kids. And the same manner, I think they are lagging somewhere, they are weak somewhere. So trying to be also in touch with them, giving them that confidence, yes, I'm there for you. I think that will really help them to come up and be more serious.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I just want to end with just 2 points. I'm very grateful that all the groups came together, and the points, I'm sure you all have heard each other, you find that there's a lot of overlap in your points. Many of the areas, even though the questions look different, the answers are actually all moving in the same direction. Because these are the elements of Bhakti-vrksha that we must become convinced. Quality of devotional service, nurturing of ourselves to nurture others, the ability to always concentrate on qualitative preaching will always make Bhakti-vrksha more effective. That's a very important point, and I'm so glad that so many devotees, all of you resonated with the same areas of points. So actually, all 5 questions are asking the same question, right? The thing is, when it's an occupational hazard. If I have to cross-examine you on a witness stand, I will ask you 5 questions in different ways, but I'm asking the same question. I'm asking 5 different questions, but there's only one answer. Right? So that's why this is structured that way, so that we all look at it from different angles, but you will see that ultimately we all understand the need for this. You're all leaders, and that's why this exercise, I hope, will be helpful to reinforce that when we go back to wherever we are, these are the things that we must really put into practice. Maharaj, thank you for joining us so much. It's been an honor, and because you are here, I think all the Chinese devotees see the effect of quality. This is it. So thank you all for your time. I know I've taken a bit more of your dinner time, but I think it's worth it because at least everybody's inputs have been there. Prabhu, we will capture everything and we will make sure it's passed down so that it will not be wasted, right? And if something doesn't come through, you have to take it. But he's been very responsible. I want to thank him so much for taking the trouble to get all the equipment and all done. And Krishna willing, let's have another 1.5 to 2 days of wonderful sadhu sangha. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhu. Jai. Hare Krishna. Jai. Go to
So, heartfelt gratitude to S.A. for a wonderful session, and also to inspire us and bring us on this journey, and for us to give out all these wonderful techniques. So next